I was beyond thrilled because it truly has been my distinct pleasure to watch Emma blossom into this beautiful, intelligent, creative young lady that you see before you this evening. I met Emma when she was a sophomore in my Chemistry 1 class, and at that time I was blown away by her creativity, by her intelligence, by her work ethic, and that pattern just continued to skyrocket. Last year, she was in the college and the high school chemistry through the University of Pittsburgh, and on 2 exams, Emma received one of the top 5 scores in all of Western Pennsylvania. Give her a round of applause.
Am I bothering you standing
so
here?
she's
you're
done
fine.
Southside very proud, and she should be super proud of herself. I'm sure she is, and I'm sure her parents are really proud of her as well. But you know, getting good grades is just a small component of a person, and perhaps even equally or more importantly, Emma always performs with the highest level of integrity. I would trust her with any task that I would put before her. She would never, ever do anything that would cause her parents, herself, her teacher, her peers to be less than honored to be in her presence. And I feel like that is really, really a great thing. So I have been honored to be in her presence for a 3rd year. She decided to take the Chemistry 4, and in addition, she's my teaching assistant, and so she keeps me in line, keeps me organized, keeps my things that I deliver to the students maybe perhaps a little bit more creative than they would be because I do not have any creativity. And so I'm just pleased to be with her, and I wish her the best of luck in her future endeavors. And who knows where that will be? She might be, she might just skip college and do her PG Prince. So that's another thing if you don't know. This summer, I learned that she incorporated her own company, which is no small feat for a high school student. So she has her own company, PG Prince. And maybe she'll do that. Maybe she'll be an engineer. Maybe she'll be an architect. Some of the things she's pondering. And she's giving serious thought as to what direction she might go in. So she's quite a stellar student here at Southside. And, again, I'm happy to be here. Take it away, Emma.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming tonight. Special thank you to my parents for supporting me the past 4 years. And thank you to Ms. Sattler for challenging me endlessly amount of times in the classroom and preparing me for the next 4 years that lie ahead. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sattler. My voice sounds good. I'm not a big microphone guy, so I have that voice that kind of carries. So the Extra Effort Award, it's kind of different than maybe from the Student of the Month, and congratulations to Emma. You know, the Extra Effort Award goes to somebody who kind of flies under the radar. That student that maybe doesn't get that recognition, you know, because they just go about their business, or you know, sometimes they go through some struggles and they rise above those struggles. You know, that's kind of what the Extra Effort Award was designed to do. And you know, this month's Extra Effort Award winner was nominated. You know, sometimes it's not all about sports. Sometimes, and I don't want you to kind of get into this and think like, oh, he nominated because he's a football player. This student is a 9th grader. You know, I dealt with this young man when I was a dean student from 7th grade on, and he went through a lot of his trials and tribulations during his younger years. And I saw a big maturation process with him this year. And a lot of kids kind of grow when they come from middle school into the high school. There's a lot more freedoms. They get to kind of find themselves a little bit. They start to kind of get involved in some things. And I really noticed that at the beginning of the year from this young man. And I reached out to a lot of teachers and said, hey, give me some names. Who do you think, you know, would kind of fall into that extra effort? I'm looking for somebody who just kind of might not get that recognition throughout the year. And this student's football coach kind of nominated him because of his hard work. his dedication, and his team-first attitude. Talking to Coach Calabrese, he said this young man is always willing to jump in and do something when asked. He's always willing to go and get something when needed. He takes those kind of extra effort steps to kind of build that team-first mentality, that team-first attitude. And this student really, looking at him, I kind of wanted to translate this, and I told this young man that I wanted to kind of have him translate this hard work, this determination, and this kind of teacher-first attitude into the classroom. Because he showed me that he can do this on the football field. So if he can do it on the football field and in the locker room and with the team, he surely can do it in the classroom and in the school. So that's my motivation for this award. And I'd like to bring up this young man, Mr. Christopher Howard. Come on up here. Chris is a man of few words sometimes, but I'm looking for big things from this young man. I think football has really helped him kind of develop and grow. And talking to his teachers over the last couple of weeks, I told them for sure, and I told you, remember I told you, I said, I want him to translate this into the classroom. And I'm looking for big things moving forward, so congratulations, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Tamalti. Thank you, Chris. Moving on down the agenda, come to 1.4, the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stewart. First of all, I have quite a few things to say this evening. But first, I would like to recognize one of our board members who has served for 12 years on our board. And as a lot of you have witnessed, it's not exactly a fun job to sit up here and deal with things as they come up. But Larry Smith has been on the board for 12 years, and so I'd like to recognize him for his service and say thank you. So, as we move forward, I feel the need to address some things. Last week, nobody said a word up here, and that's because of directions we were given, because we're allowed to talk about certain things, and we're not allowed to talk about certain things. So with that being said, I'm going to try to put into words a lot of the questions that many people have had, so that you understand where we're going. And so Lisa, I'm going to talk a little bit about the questions you submitted. Shane, I'm probably going to address some of the questions you submitted. But in that process, this is what we need to know. First, we're not permitted to talk about teacher dispositions and things that happen in the schools where we have to address the teacher. So there were a few teachers that were potentially called out at the meeting. I can assure you that we are addressing the issues that have been brought up at that meeting. They were actually already addressed previous. Secondly, insofar as policies, people are asking me, are there policies regarding restrooms? Are there policies regarding addressing students by names and so forth? The answer to that question is no. And the reason why there is not a policy for that is because as a school board, our district is advised by the Pennsylvania School Boards Association, okay? They're the ones who craft policies that districts potentially adopt. With this particular issue, okay, it is obviously something that we all feel strongly about, okay? It is. We're talking about our faith. We're talking about our belief systems. We're talking about how we were raised as children. We're talking about the things that we hold near to our heart. And honestly, a lot of those things are the reason why I moved my family here, okay? I live here because of the values and things like that that our community holds. But with that being said, a lot of times in this position, how you believe, what you feel, and what you think cannot always enter into the equation. As a commissioned officer of the state, because the question is always asked, why do I listen to the solicitor? Why do I take what the solicitor says? Whenever I am provided legal advice by the district law team that has an expertise in school law, if I provide a directive, or if I provide an order, or if I provide something contrary to what the legal advice that has been given to us by our experts, that is my commission on the line, okay? Now, as a board, if we decide to take a look at certain things and try to address them, which is what this board has done, okay? So let me explain what this board has done. We are going to be working with a group out of Harrisburg called the PA Family Council. I'm not quite sure if you know who they are. But they're a group that works in Harrisburg to help develop policies, develop laws that work with something called dual accommodations. And what a dual accommodation is number one, as adults in this district, as teachers, as administrators, and so forth, our number one responsibility is to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of all kids. That can encompass a lot, and sometimes it gets very complicated. But the safety of our kids first, even those who may not be many, and may be meek, and may not have the ability to stand up for themselves, we have a right to defend them, we have a responsibility to defend them and make sure they're okay. Likewise, we also have a responsibility to recognize people's beliefs, people's feelings, and people's freedom of speech. This PA Family Council is going to be with us to help us develop these policies that we don't have. Because quite honestly, over the course of the past few years, and even as recently as this week, there have been a lot of legal developments with this ever-changing field of school law. All right, so for example, we had our meeting on Wednesday night, and many of you were there and saw how that turned out, okay? The next day, on Thursday, the ACLU filed a suit with the Office of Civil Rights against Central Bucks County for similar circumstances. Then on Friday, a judge out of the 6th District in Texas decided on a lawsuit the opposite way. So what we have right now there are so many legal cases that are being heard, and throughout, there's many districts, right? We're in the 3rd Circuit. It is a relatively liberal stance on court cases that come, okay? The 6th District is much more conservative, which is Northern Texas. But whenever all of these districts can't come up with a decision, the Supreme Court has to take it on. And that's where we're headed, okay? That's where we're headed in this. The school can't create a policy necessarily overnight, which is why we asked for help. Because quite honestly, school districts all over the state are struggling with this very issue, okay? They're struggling with it. Because, you know, we have a president who sees things a certain way, and we have legislatures who see things differently, and we have groups that see things differently. So what has to happen in this matter is these things need to come together, and the Supreme Court's going to need to make a decision to determine the finality of it all. As a district, however, what we're going to work to do is we're going to work with this PA Family Council. We're also going to use our legal experts, and we're going to try to come up with something that is going to be threading that needle, which is a very fine line to walk, that recognizes freedom of religion, which recognizes freedom of speech, which recognizes the right of somebody to work and conduct themselves in their profession the way that they have the freedom to pursue personal happiness, while at the same time protecting students who may be affected by policy decisions and things that happen out in the community. So that's what our goal is. It is not easy, okay? It is not easy. But understand, we heard what people said, okay? I don't sleep because all I'm doing is reading court cases. And I'm not a lawyer, okay? I'm not. But that's all I've been doing. I've been reading emails from parents and people that have questions, legitimate questions, obviously. Which, by the way, Mr. Adams didn't tell you about the hallways, did he? Did he reply to you via email? He did not, because he said he was going to, but I will make sure. All right, we'll get on that, okay. You know, so with those things being said, you know, other questions were, why was this on a blank letterhead, no letterhead? So I'm going to answer that. And I'm just going to tell you something personal about me so that you understand. So, as graceful as I am, I cut my toes off with a lawnmower, okay? I had not been in school for the entire first month of school because once I had that corrected, I got a pretty bad infection, okay? This situation was arising. I had to make one phone call, and I called the solicitor's office. Can you please send something that the administrators can share that sheds some guidance on this situation? We're calling it a directive, we're calling it an order, but if you actually got an opportunity to read it, and Craig read it, what it was a clarification of what the Office of Civil Rights and what the Pennsylvania Department of Education are saying as the guidelines, okay? It was not a, you will do this, you will do that. That's not what it was, okay? Maybe had I been here, it could have been handled differently because most of you in the morning probably see me outside and I try to be pretty much everywhere, but I was unable to do it. But with that being said, understand that we are working very hard. We're listening to what you have to say. Obviously, we want to keep this Hookstown bubble That's why we're here, okay? That's why we're here. We have something very good here, and we want to keep it that way. But I'm asking for some help. I'm asking for some grace. And if you have something that you'd like to contribute, please feel free to contact me. You know, if I don't respond to you within 24 hours, which I'm usually pretty good about it, a little bit recently with the flood I've been getting, not so much, but I'm trying. Please share it with me. But just understand that we're all working very hard to resolve this in such a manner that we can respect the rights of safety, the rights of privacy, and the rights of freedom. I mean, that's why we're here. So that's my report for this evening. I thank you for your indulgence. I appreciate you not booing me. But you know, with that being said, understand that Southside Area School District is the last place that I know that is like this. It is the last place I know, and I've seen a lot of places. The biggest testament to that is that I could live anywhere I wanted to. I moved here, okay? I moved here because of the people, because of the school, and quite honestly, the biggest reason why I moved here happened during the first week of my time here, where I just happened to be walking the track during a soccer game, and the national anthem played, and I watched every single little Ram take off their helmet. I watched the cheerleaders stop what they were doing, and everybody from 3 fields around was facing that flag at attention, to the point that me, as I'm standing there like this, I had to reach into my pocket and take a picture, because coming from the places that I've been, it was never like that. This is what we need to keep. This is what our school district is all about. And you know what? We might not always agree with each other, but I'm hoping that we can get to the point that we can respect one another, and we realize that we're all in this together. That's where we are. So with that, I thank you very much, and I appreciate you hearing me out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chris. Agenda item 1.5, correspondence. The board has received numerous emails regarding topics discussed at last week's meeting. So you're all aware of that. 1.6, public comment on agenda items only. At this time, we'll take any comments on agenda items. Anyone?
I just wanted to say thank you to the board for last week for the fact that you could have shut everybody off when the time was allotted without, and nobody did that. So I think that was huge. And I think the community, whether they realize that or not, you guys have the full power to just cut that off when the time was out. Again, there was a lot of people that spoke longer than their time, and everybody got their chance to speak. So I know that was appreciated by everybody, so I'm going to reiterate that.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, approval of the minutes. It is recommended that the board approve the minutes from September 7th, 2022 work session and the September 14th, 2022 board meeting. May I have a motion? Denise, second. Bob, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 3, personnel. 3.1, elementary secretary. It is recommended that the board approve Carrie Wright as an elementary secretary with salary, current step 4, and benefits as per the Southside Area Support Personnel Association PSEA NEA agreement effective October 17th, 2022. May I have a motion? Shelley, who's down there? Second, Baron, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 3.2, part-time paraprofessional. It is recommended that the board hire Michelle Beal as a part-time paraprofessional with salary step 1 and benefits as per the Southside Area Support Personnel Association PSEA NEA agreement, effective pending final paperwork. May I have a motion? Motion. Larry, second. Bernice, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 3.3, leave of absence. It is recommended that the board approve the following leaves as listed. Motion. Larry, second. Shelley, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 3.4, bus and van driver. It is recommended that the board approve Heather Reed as a bus and van driver for Southside Garage. Motion. Barron, second. Bernice, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 3.5, supplemental compensation positions. It is recommended that the board approve the following supplemental compensation positions for the 2022-2023 school year, with compensation to be determined by supplemental compensation schedule of the professional employees agreement. Motion. Bernice, second. Shelley, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 3.6, release time. It is recommended that the board approve the following request for release time as listed. Paul with the motion. Second. Larry, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 3.7, revised pay rates, 22 and 23. It is recommended that the board approve the revised list of non-union pay rates for the 2022-2023 school year. We have a motion. Larry, second. Shelley, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 3.8, substitute athletic trainer. It is recommended that the board approve payment to Lauren Lynn in the amount of $250 for services provided as a substitute athletic trainer for Southside Area School District on October 1st, 2022. Motion. Farron, second.
I'll second it.
Bernice, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 3.9, weight room supervisor. It is recommended that the board approve Christopher Michael as a volunteer weight room supervisor for the 2022-2023 school year. Motion. Bob, second. Larry, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 3.10, full-time cafeteria employee. It is recommended that the board approve Rachel Daniels as a full-time cafeteria employee level 2 with salary and benefits as per the Southside Area Support Personnel Association PSEA NEA agreement, effective pending final paperwork. Motion. Larry, second. Farron, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 4, student activities. 4.1, activity field trip. It is recommended that the board approve the following activity field trips as listed. Motion.
I'll make a motion.
Shelley, second.
I'll second.
Bernice, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 4.2, cultural exchange program. It is recommended that the board approve the cultural exchange program to travel to Czech Republic in June 2023. Motion.
I'll make a motion.
Bernice, second.
I'll second.
Farron, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 5, board. 5.1, purchase of service agreement. It is recommended that the board approve the purchase of service agreement and business associate agreement between Southside Area School District and Beacon Lights Custer City Private School. Motion. Bernice, thank you. Second. Shelley, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 5.2, accept resignation. It is recommended that the board accept the resignation of Ronald Garvey, School Board Director, effective immediately. Motion. Bob, second. Larry, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. On that note, we will be accepting letters of interest starting tomorrow for that open position. Should any of you want to send one in, when they send it to the,
It was in the care of Mrs. Dawson, and it's a letter of interest for the vacant board seat, that we have 30 days, from the date of acceptance of the resignation to fill that seat. That next voting session for November, the regular voting meeting, is within that 30 days. So we would be taking those letters, and then the board would be deciding the process to move forward. If there are interviews, they would be public interviews. So that's how that would move forward.
thank you.
How long of a term would that be?
So it would be for the remainder of Mr. Garvey's term, which is 1 year, like, what is it, Yeah, next year it'd be a one-year term, and then that would be on the appointment, and then that individual would have to then run again at the end of that term.
23 hours.
Yes, next year. Agenda item 6, curriculum, 6.1, approved book. Someone say? Sorry. It is recommended that the board approve the book Thirst by Varsha Bajaj for the middle school global read aloud for the 2022-2023 school year. Motion.
I'll make the motion.
Bernice, second. Bob, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 7, finance, 7.1, financial reports. It is recommended that the board acknowledge the receipt of the financial reports. Motion.
Motion.
Larry, second.
I'll second.
Shelley, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 7.2, payment of the bills. It is recommended that the board approve payment of the bills and ratify the payment of payroll obligations paid electronically. Motion.
Motion.
Larry, second.
I'll second.
Barron, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 8, facilities, 8.1, replace equipment. It is recommended that the board approve Holt Ramsey Pump and Equipment Company to remove the commuter from the sewage plant for the purpose of rebuilding it and reinstalling it at a cost of $11,235. Motion.
I'll make the motion.
Bernice, second.
I'll second.
Shelley, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 8.2, purchase equipment. It is recommended that the board approve the purchase of an EO duplex grinder pump station, model number DH152-93 from Trumbull Equipment Company Incorporated at a cost of $14,631. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Larry, second.
I'll second.
Barron, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. This is the voting portion of the meeting. At this time, we move into agenda item 9, which is special reports. And we will get updates from the admin team. First up, with an update to Mr. Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. I have a few assessment items to report on this evening. The Act 35 civics exam data was entered into the Future Ready Comprehensive Training Portal, which is the state system of collecting data. This is a state-required civics exam we administer yearly to students in our social studies 9 class. So that data has been entered. We have a new pupil attitudes to self-school survey that was administered to middle school and high school students, and elementary students will be done soon. This survey is administered once in the fall and once in the spring. This is something new that we're doing this year. It was developed by a team of educational psychologists from multiple universities to address social and emotional barriers to learning, providing information about how students feel about themselves as a learner and how they feel about school. It allows the school to detect and proactively address possible barriers to student learning, including issues around confidence, resilience, motivation, and concentration, which can compromise the well-being and academic success of the students. We had today, as a matter of fact, the College Board PSAT testing for all sophomores and juniors, and we have a small group of freshmen that also participated in that, and then we have a small group of 8th graders taking the PSAT 8/9, which is a different version of that, on October 26th coming up. Content on the PSAT is very similar to the SAT, with reading, math, and writing and language sections. Taking the exam connects students to more than $300 million in potential scholarships, including the National Merit Scholarship Program, and is excellent practice for the SAT. Results show student progress on the road to college. It can also be used with a very well-known program called Khan Academy to create a customized SAT study. Yesterday and today, one curricular item to report on. Yesterday and today, our science department chair, Mr. Casato, and myself attended NGSS Science Standards Training. NGSS stands for Next Generation Science Standards. These are new standards that were developed and approved by the Pennsylvania Department of Education that will officially take effect in 2025, which seems like a long way away, but we're beginning those implementation stages now, looking at the standards and how we can implement those. So the training was helpful in getting us to take a look at that. So thank you for your approval of that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Next up, we have an update from Mr.
things, I'll keep it kind of short here. Throughout this, my walkthroughs and things like that, a lot of our teachers are doing a lot of real world hands-on lessons. They're engaging our students. A lot of things, our curriculum is going well. Mr. Paul, our teachers are adding that curriculum. As I'm going into the classroom, our students should be engaged, they're learning. There's a lot of good things that are going on in those classrooms. Mr. Paul kind of stole my thunder a little bit, but we did have PSAT testing today for our 10th and 11th graders. So they were involved in that. Those scores kind of really matter as we move forward with keystones in comparison to those things and stuff like that. So there's really a reward for those students who do very well in those tests today. There have been a lot of educational trips going on throughout high school. COVID kind of, being, a little bit down a little bit. Our kids are getting out, getting to these places that they haven't been able to, exploring some things. I know Mr. Welsh took our students to the Bocce Summit. Mr. Travelkeach took some of our transition students to Who Works the Rivers. Mr. Austin took some of our AP English students to Meadowcraft Rock Shelter. So a lot of trips going on, and as you saw in the dockets, there's more trips that we're getting our students out to experience some things out there. Some of you may have walked in. I know it's dark outside, but Mrs. Simpson in her PE health classes participated in the chalk walk, where they wrote some inspirational messages of positivity on the sidewalk leading up, just trying to kind of promote some of those things out in our school and into our community as they come in. And also Mrs. Falsonetti and Mrs. Simpson took some of our middle school and high school students to our Fall Beaver County Youth Ambassador event, which talked about, which they had a panel of experts and students talking about the mental health crisis. And our youth ambassadors, we get a lot of feedback and a lot of positive stuff from our Southside Youth Ambassador. Mrs. Falsonetti does a great job with that. And everywhere I go, people say, I was just down at a MAC conference the other day, Dr. Sheffield, who had spoken to us earlier this year about training the brain and mind, he just sings the praises of our YAP program and how involved they are. And our youth ambassadors getting involved, and our young people just being positive and taking things back to the community and sharing them with their fellow students and so on and so forth. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kamalti. And for our final admin update, I would like to introduce everyone to Dr. Dave Annie. He is our new substitute elementary principal. If you have anything you'd like to say?
No, I've only been here a few days, but I was fortunate enough to witness Grandparents Week last week, or a couple days of that. What a great tradition. It's the first one, I believe, in 3 years. And I just want to recognize all the hard work the PTO did to put that on. But I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that. With that, we can roll into agenda item 10. It's the public comment section. This time, we will take public comment on non-agenda items. I'm sure you all are familiar with the rules. We have 3 minutes.
Okay.
First, last name.
Quick question, I understand why Mr. Garvey's not here tonight, but is it common that we have 3 board members not here for a voting session?
I don't know if it's common, but they all had personal commitments they had to make. It's not common, but they did that.
Alright. And, you just introduced the elementary principal, why did we have to add that? I'm out of the elementary now, my son's in middle school, so why did we add a principal to the elementary?
So we didn't have a principal at the elementary. Mrs. Welch had an extended family leave.
Okay.
So it's a substitute principal, so
Okay.
Mrs. Welch can
Alright. Okay, thank you.
scores, which were not in the improper notification process that seems to need major improvement. Upon my son starting this fall as a second grader, I was made aware that by his assessment, he was considered borderline when it comes to his reading abilities. And from speaking with the Title I teacher, there are several students with scores as such. I was never formally notified when he was in first grade that he had similar scores and that he was behind others in his class. And late in the school year, I actually received an undescriptive remark from his teacher that he's having trouble with his tests, but with no further input as far as what can be done. I felt that's not acceptable as a professional educator, me, myself as a professional, that would be considered unacceptable in my workplace. I do want him to be formally assessed, which I've already reached out to the appropriate bodies for that. But it seems as though there's multiple children in the elementary school that are considered borderline that unfortunately do not meet the recommendations for Title I program. However, that is then put on the school class teacher to give the assistance to the kids, which is not always appropriate. If these kids continue to struggle now at the foundation years, this will continue through their life and through the rest of their school years here at Southside. I'm just asking if there's other parents, if you are aware that your children may be considered borderline, do you know what their test scores are? Ask those questions, reach out, speak up, because we are the voice of our children.
This is on Christine Campbell, Leaper Road. So, being the voice of my child who has graduated already, one of them. So, I want to share an experience that happened approximately 5 years ago, because I feel that this is it's a leading indicator of behavior that's been going on, and with recent events, this is what triggered. So, I had my son type this since he's away at school, and I will email this to you guys. So, I'm going to leave names out. And here we go. So this is from my son. About 5 years ago, he was in class, I'm not gonna say the class, we were just loading up notes and the whole class was talking, but I seemed to always get the blame for it. So the teacher choked me and told me to stop talking because I was being annoying and rude. In that class, I was moved around the class twice because no matter where I was sitting, people always talked and I was to blame. I also witnessed another kid get choked. My mother also got a call from this teacher, and I put it on speaker so my son can hear. The teacher said, your son learned a new trick of talking to other students from across the room with his mouth shut. Because, across the room with his mouth closed because she moved me, but for the kids that were still talking, he was somehow to blame. My son also emailed someone in higher authority to help address this. This individual said, follow up with me. My son never did because he didn't want to deal with any consequences and he just wanted the whole situation to be over. 5 years ago, he still remembers this. This teacher should not have laid their hands on him, nor the other student, which I spoke to their parents, and I'm not speaking on their behalf. They have their own concerns. And all this, I feel it as a parent because I listened to my son saying, don't get involved, Mom. But at the same time, he was being vulnerable and reaching out, and help wasn't there for him. If this teacher continues to show and demonstrate to all of us, putting hands on students that should not be there, I feel we are owed as the public that is being dealt with. We're told when other things are being dealt with, but aggression, name calling, and physical touch should not be allowed. I think that's really it. So that's what I wanted to share, but I can email you guys the letter from my son. I can give you specifics.
I have a couple questions. The academic letter, so Robert Kellish, the original. I'd like to know if we have a student that is going through issues, whether it's sex abuse at home or by someone else, or home issues at home, parents going through a divorce, being bullied, or having transgender issues. Do they get counseling?
So we do have 3 counselors. We have one counselor counselor in the elementary school, 2 counselors in high school and middle school. But along with that, we also have something known as the Student Assistance Program, or SAP team. And if there's a student that is having issues because sometimes it's change of behavior, sometimes it's change of friends, sometimes it's lack of academic achievement. There's a lot of indicators that, that suggest that maybe something may not be right. The student assistance team gets involved. What they do is they talk to the teachers and find out what the issues are, which, by the way, don't worry, I'm talking about 3 times about taking.
Okay, I do.
But anyway, what'll happen is, once that happens, then that information would be brought together at a SAP team meeting, and the guidance counselor would then become involved, the parents would then become involved, and then there's a lot of resources, Beaver County Mental Health Services for some, there's a bunch of different things that the school district can, while we can't officially recommend, we make sure that they know that those things are available.
Okay, but we're treating everyone equally, whether you're transgender, all these other problems. They're being treated equally, okay, and I assume they would be. So, what's the big deal? I know on Title IX, I read some of Title IX. From what I understand, I'm not an attorney, Title IX was put in effect because of girls' sports. They weren't being treated with economically in colleges, schools. They weren't. That's what Title IX was officially for. Now it's blown up to everything. And I have a question for the solicitor. Well, no, one more for you, if possible. What percent of federal funds is our budget? What percent of our budget is federal funds?
We probably have about 2% revenue from federal funds.
2%?
More now, but that's going to run out.
Ballpark figure, money-wise.
$1 million.
Okay. If our school can come up with $1 million, we can wipe out Title IX. We don't have to follow it if we get, as long as we don't become prejudiced against the students. If we give them the same as bullying, everything the same, if we have to come up with $1 million, we can tell them to go take a hike. And we can run our community fairly, and we should watch out for everyone, and we don't have to worry about the issues of 1 or 2, or actually less than 1%, 0.01% makes the rest of the community prejudiced against. That's wrong. And one more question too, for the solicitor. What can we do to get out of this Title IX? What can we do to keep everybody not being prejudiced against here and still respect Title IX?
Yeah, so those are legal discussions that I would have to have with the board, and they're ongoing. As the superintendent indicated earlier, we're also consulting with outside counsel in an attempt to develop policies that are non-discriminatory as it relates to transgender students, and also address some speech-related things in our
Because if we allow this to happen, this is going to blossom. Other schools are going to come here. And you're going to have gentlemen going in ladies' restrooms. You're going to have students playing on the girls' ball team, which I spoke the other day. There's going to be 4 or 5 boys. So girls' sports is going to be wiped out. And we're going to have an issue because if a guy walks into a ladies' restroom in Southside, he may not come out. If he does, there'll be 5 guys waiting for him. And it's going to be an issue. It's going to be an issue.
John Gilbert with Frankfurt Springs. Thank you guys for last week and hearing. And I know it was hard for you, it was hard for all of us. It wasn't easy for anyone, so I appreciate your grace and listening. And I guess clarity questions for me. I didn't receive all the emails to the questions, but just some clarity. What is our policy on bathrooms today? I know you're talking and discussing everything. What is it now today?
So there is no policy on restrooms as it is today.
But
What happens, there's a practice.
Yeah.
So obviously we have boys and girls rooms. There is also another restroom that is available. There may have been students using restrooms in the past. That does not
think, law intention would say you do have a policy that says male, female, and if you have another bathroom that's marked, then that would be your policy, even whether it's written or not. So I believe we should follow that. I will tell you, I have 2 daughters in middle school. It's not being followed. Male walked into the bathroom just the other day without being addressed. And so they're uncomfortable, they don't like it, I'm speaking on their behalf. They have laws, they have rights too, and they don't want a male walking in, even though, and they're not judging, they're not prejudiced, I'm just saying that they have rights too, and they don't agree with that it's not being addressed. So it is happening, and I just want to let you know it is happening. Second, I appreciate you had some hard times, and a letter did go out. I would say, my question is, because you did say that wasn't policy and it wasn't enforced, but that can't be true because you put an administrative teacher on leave. So I'm just sitting here hearing you, and something did happen, that's why we're all here. Something did happen, so I need some clarity of, if that wasn't a policy, then this should have never happened, but it did.
Once again, there was that note that went out, that there were things that happened afterwards. And really, it's a personnel matter, I'm not allowed to talk about it.
Okay, well, I understand, but I just want you to know, it is a little confusing to us, I guess, as, we're here and hearing different stories as well, but, so I wanted to ask a question to get clarity. Ms. Wildan, I know you're shaking your head, I just want clarity. I'm a public, I pay my taxes, I deserve an answer just as much as everybody else, so I appreciate that. I guess those are things that I would just want some clarity on, what the policy is, if we're enforcing that policy. I understand you're looking at it, you may rewrite the policy, but we just need to know what it is now for our students and as parents moving forward. So, thank you.
Ethan Walker, Upper Service. I meant to bring it up in section 1.6 since it is on the agenda, but I just wanted to confirm, are there and what are, if you're able to disclose, the additional safety measures taken for students traveling to the Czech Republic, given the events going on in the world right now? I know it's a little farther away from Ukraine than you'd think, but it is close enough to, that was it.
That's a very good question. Those conversations are happening as one, looking at different insurance options, things like that. But quite honestly, the thing in Ukraine expands.
It's still developing every day, so I think.
So we are keeping an eye on it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tammy Will, Hozak Road. I do have a question. Mr. Paul said that there was a survey coming out that twice a year, you said, for the younger kids in high school that would deal with and ask questions about emotional, whether they're having difficulties in school. Are the parents notified of that survey?
Yes.
And they get to see the survey?
Yes.
And can they opt out of it?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. And a lot of the things that you already addressed, I was gonna ask you about. You did your homework as well. That's good.
You don't have access to the survey. I did call and ask questions, and you had to have, permission from PAS in order to share the actual survey. There's, a sample online of the, categories of the questions asked, but I was not able to receive a copy of the survey that the younger kids would get or the older kids, and this is only elementary, I don't know what, it's like, but, Mrs. Emmerlock was very kind and said that if I wanted her to, ask the company that she would do that, otherwise she was happy to opt the kids out, but we were not actually able to see the survey that the kids were gonna be taking. But there was, some level of transparency, but I guess copyright rules or whatever, I don't know. It was not available though, and she did assure me that, some of the things going on, in the conversation, they believe or not, they don't even have the option to fill out male or female on the survey. So,
Were you able to opt out?
I'm sorry?
Were you able to opt out?
No, I trusted her. I had no reason not to trust her. She was open, honest, and transparent with me, so I said, as long as there's not those questions that are gonna, confuse a first grader, then I'm fine with that. And then that's when she said, no, they don't even have the option to check male or female. It's just a survey about
that that could be addressed? That,
I'll follow up with Ms. Emrock in the morning, figure out what we need to do to be able to get access to the survey.
When you said that they listed questions on the survey, maybe the way they're doing it is they might have a poll of 20 questions.
No, you know what it was, that you can actually see online, it says like, in this specific, category, this is how the students ranked, like, so.
Okay, so you weren't seeing like a pretty list of questions.
No
I was just thinking that maybe
sample
that's got it all.
questions.
But
It was just a report, a sample report as like what the administrators would see after the questions were answered. Does that make sense?
the one thing that I did, looking into other issues, is finding out that, as everyone keeps talking about laws and case studies and stuff, that everything's called a guidance. Everything coming down from the government, because an executive order from Biden coming in and saying that this is how we have decided to interpret Title IX. So Title IX started off as a good thing and is now being twisted and turned. And you know, it's very sad. I know that, I don't know if everybody's aware though, that the administration has also put the lunch money for schools as tied to it. If the schools don't do what the government wants, the lunch money, any aid to the schools, all tied to it. I know that it's a 50-state initiative that the ACLU is coming down on everybody. So we have your back. We don't have to be afraid of these people that are coming up with these initiatives. I do question, I don't know everything about our solicitor. I do question if he has any political motives himself about information hopefully being given to you and it's down the middle and it's not, he favors one side and, you know, so we're given things tilted one way or the other. I'm hoping that's not the case. But but she works for the solicitor, right, in the office?
I can speak to that. Ira is a man of great intellect and great integrity, and we as a law firm, under his guidance, mutually look at the law and try to inform our districts and all of our clients what we believe based on our understanding, our knowledge, our reading the law is, what areas there are that aren't concrete or set in stone, and so.
Because everything right now is not a law. It's the interpretation and then guidance is what they're being called.
So there's guidance and things like that that can come down from PBE and other entities like administrative entities. Then you have law, like statute, right, like the legislature enacts. And then you have law that is interpretive, it's case law. And so case judges, right, might read a statute, apply it to a particular set of facts, and interpret it a little bit differently than it may be written or may be read. And so those are the sort of areas that we draw from. But case law and statute are both binding. So if a court interprets a guideline or a guidance or an executive order in a particular way, those are considered to be binding and the rules that moving forward.
Right. But everything can be changed. What's made can be changed.
Of course, the law is subject to change. The legislature can enact a new statute. The Supreme Court could make an ultimate decision about an area that the Third Circuit's fighting about with the Sixth Circuit. So of course, at any point in time, it is subject to change, but until it changes, it is what it is.
Okay, so as of now, Mr. Casado still has his position. Is that right? And it's not gonna change this week, next week, we're gonna talk with that council, PA council, you said? PA family council?
That situation is over, that's done, Mr. Casado's back.
So what has been decided then about what does he can or any other teacher when it comes to the program?
So he's back, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to thread that needle. We're talking about something that we're gonna call dual, I forget the exact word, that there's dual acceptance. Whereas there will be some that are probably going to accept the pronoun thing and they will be willing to use that. In the case of somebody else who may not be willing to do so and they have beliefs that are to the contrary, they may be addressing the student by potentially, by making eye contact or just, speaking.
Or using a last name.
Yes, yes. So that's what we're looking at as potential options. We don't have a policy in writing yet.
Okay, thank you.
Hi guys, Christy Gibson, Old Mill Creek Road. Did you all get my letter that I sent in? Okay, thank you. I wanted to ask you all or invite you, I have an LGBT community member that would like to offer their time to sit with you and do a Q&A. And I would like to invite you. Would you be willing to accept that invitation? We could structure that sometime in the next 2 weeks, however you would like to do it. It could be with several of you or in different meetings at the school or outside the school.
So they could not meet as a group because it would be a forum, it would be.
Right, yep, so maybe smaller group, and specifically, I would say, Bob, Craig, and Larry, if you all specifically would be willing to sit down with us, I think that would be, a show of willingness to kind of hear what the LGBT community member, okay, thank you very much, I appreciate that. Okay, thank you.
Christy, if I may, I'm happy to discuss this with the board and get your contact information if that needs more.
Yeah, absolutely. Open to forum, but I appreciate that. Thank you very much. The other thing is after the meeting last week, a couple of people reached out to me. One was a coworker, just on an interesting point, but I think it is a really interesting point. He reminded me that his brother has Klinefelter syndrome, and I knew that, and I don't know why I forgot it, but that is a condition that is 2 X chromosomes and a Y chromosome. And he proceeded to tell me about the over 100, different medical issues that physically result in a non-binary person. I mean, it's a medical situation at that point. He also went on to tell me, he gave me some other facts, but I actually called my daughter's pediatrician just to validate it. And she told me that, there are 1 in 2,500 to 1 in 4,500 children when they're born. They are, upon observance, not able to be categorized as male or female. So whatever we come up with, that's a pretty high number of the population. And I know a few folks that have that condition. I think when you talk about Title IX and the purpose of it, and the revisions 2020, after 2017 and 2020, it's really just about making sure that everyone is accommodated. It is an anti-discrimination law. So I think that, just interesting to hear the comments last week. When you all are putting the policy in place, I would just like you to consider that none of this is going away. So, none of it. I hope that 10 years from now, that all of you up here aren't saying, this is a policy, but I don't agree with it. It's just what the state makes us do. It's what somebody else is making us do. It would be really nice, and it's gonna happen eventually, where everybody says, we're doing this because it's the right thing to do. So anyway, thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Jackie Mahalik. I was on Murdochsville Road. I was not prepared to speak tonight. I was just going to kind of take it in because I was unable to be here last week. I've been reading a lot about Ira Weiss, and I don't have enough information to share a lot with you guys right now, but I can read you these first 2 paragraphs from 2016. I'm sure he's a man of integrity and honor, but I'm not sure that our values align. And this is on the Education Law Center newsroom. It's also reported by the Trib Live. I'll just read the first 2 or 3 paragraphs, and then if you want to know more, all you have to do is Google Ira Weiss and transgender laws. So Ira Rice encourages his clients to be proactive when it comes to transgender students. His law firm represents 14 local school districts, and he is working with each of them to develop policies to support and accommodate students who are assigned one gender at birth but identify with the other. Weiss said these policies should be in place before problems arise, as they have in cities where districts have been sued for denying transgender students access to certain bathrooms or locker rooms. Aside from the legal consequences, which we all want to avoid, it's a civil rights issue, said Weiss of Weiss, Burkett, and Kramer. It's protecting individuals and giving them their rights, but it's also stripping students that are not transgender, and that is the majority, and a lot of what we do in America and everything else is based on the majority, and not bending one way to affirm brokenness. It is truly broken for a child to believe that they are a mistake, for a boy to be convinced that he is a girl, and for adults to affirm that instead of love the child through it and help that child realize that they are not a mistake. It is emotional, spiritual, and psychological abuse for these transgender kids, and they do not deserve to be picked on, and they do not deserve to be singled out. They deserve respect and honor, and they deserve to be led in a direction that is healthy and good for their heart and good for their body and good for their future. Thanks, that's it.
I just want to say real quick, and I want to remind everybody up here and everybody in here, that it seems like a lot of people are leaning towards, the solicitor doesn't align with our district. I feel that way. I want to remind everybody, the solicitor works for the school. The school does not work for the solicitor. So I just want to remind everybody of that.
I'd just like to, Matt Swearingen, I live on Temple Road. I'd just like to take a moment to add a little bit of levity, and can we all appreciate Mr. McDougall, who 30 years ago decided he was only going to call students by their last names. Just, so we all So on a more serious note, guidance, rule, law, regardless, the thing I found odious about the rule is that if a student is using one set of pronouns at school and is scared of reprisals from their parents, right? Perhaps their parents don't agree with them. I know maybe not our guidance here that caused all the uproar, but at some other schools, there are requirements for the teachers to, in effect, deceive parents, to use the original rostered pronouns when dealing with parents to not out the child. So I thought about that for a second. I thought, okay, well, it would be kind of hypocritical for me to take issue with that. I don't know for a fact, and I don't expect you guys to have encyclopedic knowledge of every policy. Do we have any policies on the books right now about anything that require parents, or teachers, administration, anyone, to deceive parents? I would imagine if there's accusations of parents hurting children, that would make sense, but are there any others?
So there's no policies on the books that say that. In fact, that's actually one of the policies that we're looking at to create with this paper in the council as to how to handle situations like that.
Okay.
The only thing that is governed by law, that actually is a law in my opinion, is that it is the responsibility if the counselor or person that is speaking to the parents, if they believe that that child is in danger of being abused whenever they go home, they are not to report it to the child. However, that would then fall under mandated reporter, and it would be child line, and those people would become involved.
Okay, and then it would be a police issue. So, okay, and then my only other question is, and you said it was being addressed, and you can't speak to personnel issues. At what time is it okay during a violent interaction for a teacher to go hands-on with a student? It's obviously not okay for a teacher to grab a hold of a student as they're arguing or something, but if a student's assaulting another one, just in general, when is it okay? Because, I mean, if my child's getting, beat by several students, I would hope someone would help it. Like, when is it okay for teachers to intervene? Okay.
I can answer that, and so it's a matter of case law. There's actually a list of instances wherein not only are teachers allowed to use force, but sometimes they're required to protect other kids.
they're not forbidden from intervening in the case of imminent harm? Okay, it's just they shouldn't go hands-on unless there's imminent harm, yes?
It has to be in instances where there's real or threatened harm, right? It can't be as like a discipline because the students go back to a teacher or something like that. It has to be an effort to prevent towards real or
Great. Okay, well, that's the answer I was looking for. Thank you, guys, and thank you, Mr. McDougal, if you hear this.
Evan Scovron, I live on Mill Road. I was wondering if there's any follow-up on the microphones in the bathrooms that was brought up last week.
So yes, there was actually a social media post from the high school, as well as a Sapphire email notification went out. Insofar as that device, it does not have the capability to monitor conversations. It does not have comparability to or anything like that. We actually have youth ambassadors that we actually took and demonstrated, all demonstrated. There is a pre-set term on this device, help emergency. If you say help emergency, it recognizes that, and like it blinks blue, and like it'll say help emergency, and then Officer K-Ball will get a text message. But it is not a listening device.
Well, it's listening for keywords, so it's a listening device.
Right. It's not a recording device. It does not monitor conversations. It can't do it. Does not have the capacity to do it.
But you're saying it's listening to people's conversations.
Say
in the
it's
restroom.
not, is what it's a good thing. It's a good thing, guys. If it prevents a shooting, it's a good thing.
All right.
Think about it.
I've thought about it. I'm on your side for a lot of stuff, but I don't know how I feel about microphones and listening devices in the restroom.
It saves one life.
Well, how do we feel about using the correct pronoun and saving one child's life? If that's your standard, is one life, you have to take their side of that argument also.
I didn't say anything about it. I'll answer that question.
All right. Thank you.
Back to that though, I know when I was on transportation, we had to get, written consent, we had a video, and then when we put audio on, was there written consent when you put the, devices in the restroom?
It's not recording, it's not audio recording. Okay, so that permission is something that if you're going to take video with audio on, there's wiretapping laws that come into play because you're actually monitoring and recording conversations. This recognizes two words, help emergency. And if you see the videos on the news of kids getting beat up in the bathroom and things like that, if somebody says help emergency, they're going to get help. That's why that's there.
And the other thing, everybody here, we were complacent. Last week there was 400 plus people. Part of this problem was our fault. We've been complacent and we never came to any board meetings. We have to take some of the blame.
Hi, my name is Tate Road. I think you know me from last week. So I also wanted to address a few things. First of all, we probably are reading the same footnotes in case law ad nauseum. And so I'm not going to touch on that this evening. I did want to point out some of the things that were said to me in a derogatory manner, because if they're said to me in a derogatory manner in a public meeting that's being recorded and broadcasted on national news, then it is filtering into your school system. And so that's where I'm going to focus on tonight. Where does this line between my faith and my 48-page faith statement that comes from my own church come in conflict with the church that's around the corner that has a different view on how that we live our lives as Christians? How does that infiltrate into the school? So looking at that, you brought up some really good things tonight already. And again, I brought this up last week. How do we implement a zero tolerance policy? It's on the district website. What does that mean? What does that look like? How do we handle bullying in the school system? What does that look like during the action? We hear the recordings. What happens? What happens to the students afterwards? How do we deal with hate speech? How do we deal with colloquialisms, run like a girl, throw like a girl, things like that. How do we deal with colloquialisms? How do we deal with harassment and bullying and retaliation? Those are all things that are already in policies that are written into the school board's policies. So how are we going to incorporate the harassment policy that's in place into these new policies that we're saying need to be written? Do you have teachers and staff that are MANT trained? Do you have teachers and staff that are MANT trained, M-A-N-D-T? That's a de-escalation process that involves taking a situation and de-escalating from something that could be verbal all the way up to a student escalating into physical violence. Neighboring school districts do have that in place already, and so I can get you some information on that. But that is an appropriate thing to be looking into in this situation. I will say on a personal level, I have been flooded with people asking for resources on how to deal with harassment, bullying, and retaliation. This is an issue. Whether our faiths align or not, whether our home values align or not, the ultimate is we all stand in the same building. So how are we going to move forward for our students in the community?
Rebecca Steckman, Macomsky Road. I only have 3 questions this evening. What is the process to get a new solicitor? And can we submit recommendations based on our values that align with our community? I work in higher education, so are the directors from the Department of Education, are they a must or are they may? Will parents be allowed to give input and review the policies before they are enacted? And will the community be involved and surveyed about the policy? Thank you.
So in regard to your question about policy, all policy will be up for public review, so you will have an opportunity to look at that. Insofar as the solicitor, each year the solicitor would submit potentially a letter and ask to be considered for retention for the following year. The board does review that. If the board should get information from people with other recommendations, they would review that as well. And that process would be a vote process. And then what was your second question? So there are some directions from the Department of Education that are must, there are some that are recommendations. So there are the absolutes, there are the would be nice, and there would be the optional one, yes.
I'm 117 Graph Road. I have a couple questions. First of all, can you tell me, are members of your staff CPI or safety care trained?
Yes, we are CPI.
So to piggyback off of her question then, if you had a student that was involved in a fight, would you not call on your staff that was CPI trained or safety care trained to break that up in an appropriate, safe manner?
Actually, it would depend on the situation. Obviously, there's certain nuances that are unto themselves. I mean, if 2 kids are going at each other, primarily, like most of the time, it's special education teachers that are CPI trained. I know that I am, and I know that other administrators are as well. But there may be teachers that are not CPI trained that are now put in a situation when maybe 2 kids are going at it, and they do have the responsibility. I mean, you're a school administrator.
So why do you not have safety protocol put in place or walkie-talkies to immediately call those people that are CPI trained to be on the site within seconds?
Oh, we do have those.
Okay, so that shouldn't really then be a factor. You should be able to reassure people that you can break those situations up safely and in a timely manner. My second question is, can you tell me the people that are on your SAP team in the high school?
Can I tell my people, can I tell my what?
Who is on the SAP team in the high school?
So, Mrs. Falsenetti is the individual who leads up student assistant. She and Dan LaRue as the counselors. I know that Mrs. Schroeder is a member of the staff team. The principals are both Mr. Adams and Mr. Malty. I believe there are other teachers as well, but I do not know who they are.
Okay, how do the students know who's on the SAP team?
They get introduced to them the first day of school. Go ahead, Jenny.
So our staff team has multiple teachers, regular ed, special teachers. We're constantly growing that administration. The nurses on there
So my kid's supposed to look on the district webpage?
It's also in the, it's listed in multiple places in the school, I believe, it's on the back of the restroom stalls. It should be wrong, it's on the.
Okay, maybe I'll let my daughter come and talk.
Oh, okay.
She's not aware of who's on the SAP team. Usually it's supposed to be labeled within the school outside of the teacher's door or the counselor's door or administration's door to recognize that that's a person that they can go to if they're having an issue. And just to piggyback off of one other thing that was brought up, that if somebody was having a crisis, like whether or not in the classroom, you know, if they were to violate that as a teacher, a him or her, or whatever, is there not protocol in place that they should then probably go through a staff referral with administration so then they can adequately notify the parents since they're a minor to bring that situation to light?
There's not that policy in place at this time. I'm not quite sure what you're asking.
I'm asking if the SAP program is in place and it's run properly and identified, that if you have these situations that arise and occur, that a SAP referral can be made by anyone. It can be made by a parent, it can be made by a staff member, it can be made by an administrator, and I would think that would be a perfect situation where a SAP referral would occur, that we might be able to alleviate some of these situations, because you could call the parents in and have those discussions openly, because that child is a minor.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay. I just want a clarification. Thanks.
Real quick, I don't need to get a mic, but I just wanted to ask, how many people here have a smartphone? Pretty much everybody, right? As far as these recording devices go, I kind of did a little homework on, you're being tracked more from your smartphone than you are from these listening devices.
I consent to that by holding this. I paid for
I agree with that, I'm just saying that we are, by giving your kid, you consent to giving your kid's cell phone in school, your kid's cell phone gets tracked more than the, and I understand the divide between the freedom of speech and the rights and the privacy, I totally do. But we've also got to remember that their jobs are to protect the students in the school. Because at the same time, if we have something happen in a bathroom, somebody's gonna come to the school board and say, well, why couldn't we have prevented this? And I don't want them to say, because at the school board meeting, they made us take this out of here because we put pressure on it. We gotta keep focused on what's right and what this whole thing was at first. And kind of just not stray on other things, because I mean, this is my personal opinion, it doesn't matter to everybody. I would rather those be there and be safe. And because like I said, if our kid has a cell phone or in my car, you all know it, they're scrolling on Facebook, and the last thing we were talking about, the ad pulls up. So I mean, we're being listened to, so it's not like they're in here tracking the kids or anything. This, I firmly believe, and I asked Chief King also, that this is a safety device to help the students. So I think that, I just wanted to add that to everybody real quick.
Are the students aware of what you're supposed to say?
Right.
What you're supposed to say?
Health emergency.
Yeah, no, are the students aware?
Yeah, so that was part of the process that we were going through with the kids, we were sharing advice, and then that youth ambassador then spreads the word, and we also put that information out on the social media page, explaining what it was, as well as sapphire email to parents and students.
So it's only listening for help in emergency, because the lady last week said that her daughter said something to the effect of, I should just kill myself and set the alarms off.
Yeah, so I don't know what that story actually is, I heard the same thing you did, but the only thing that thing can recognize is health emergency.
Hi, I was here last week. My name's Jenny Unger. I live on Liberty Street. And I just wanted to ask a couple of clarifying questions. The members of the SAP team that we have for each of the schools, do they have formal counseling training?
So not formal counseling training, but each person that is part of the SAP team does have to go through the SAP training process. It's usually like a week long, and basically what it talks about is it talks about the process, like what the paperwork looks like, it talks about what monitoring looks like. It talks about the signs and things to look for, whether it's a change in grades, change in friends, change in behavior, that sort of thing. And then it talks about, what you do once you get a referral, right? So they put out these papers, right? And it's the teachers, hey, so-and-so, do you notice any of these things? And like it's a checkbox. And then those all come back together, they become compiled. And then from there, the SAP team then discusses the results, goes to potentially a counselor or potentially an administrator who may be close to the kid, and then that's where the contact with the parent would then come in and say, hey, this is what we noticed because we're concerned. And parents can initiate the SAP process themselves as well. So, and then they say, if these are things that you're interested in talking to somebody about, you can take a look at it in Newtown Behavioral Health. There's all these resources that are available.
So most of those resources would be outside of the school?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's a referral process as opposed to a counseling process.
Do we ever refer them internally to our own school psychologists?
So our school psychologist, like.
Or guidance counselors?
So counselors, yes. We also do have, we do have a program called Foster Steps. It's mental health services in school that, you know, kids can take advantage of, adults can take advantage of too. So that's there as well. But yes, those are also things.
So I guess a breakdown question is, do we acknowledge mental health consent age versus legal consent age for our students in any capacity? So if it's a mental health struggle that they're dealing with, do we recognize their mental health consent age of 14 versus 18?
So for the students, if there's a mental health issue that is being discussed, the parents are made aware of it. You know, that's how we provide that, and they can have the parents sign on, correct?
Purposes for participation in the staffing program for the emotional screening for the prevention network. Consent is required at for all students. I'd have to go back and look at that.
But consent for children that are under 18 would be their parents' consent? Okay. So that if there was follow-up need that was given, we would still deliver all of that information to our kids' parents, respectively under the age of 18. We wouldn't acknowledge that 14. Okay, thank you.
My name is Jolie Winterode. I live on Sharon Drive. Just a little bit of backstory about myself. I also am a member of a school board, so I know how intimidating it can be when you have a ton of people come up here, kind of in your face about some stuff, whether you agree with it or not. I'm also on a committee with the township, so I understand the conflict that you might be feeling with the community. But from the sounds of it, it sounds like most of the school board is kind of backing with the parents about keeping our children safe while they're in school, whether it be about their gender identity or overall safety with like the health and emergency. But I, just like Mr. Fritz, did not grow up here in Southside. I actually grew up in Beaver. I went to Beaver High School. I graduated in 2013, and I believe the same solicitor that we have now was also a solicitor for Beaver at one point in time. And I believe they were removed from Beaver for not following what the board backed or wanted, but more so following their own agenda. And as most of you know, Beaver might be a little bit more of a liberal town, in the sense of having maybe a gay pride night at a football game, which is fine if that's what you believe, but I don't really understand why it's okay to do one thing versus the other. So if you're gonna accept maybe the transgender role, then we also need to accept the religion role as well. It can't be one or the other, it needs to be both. So the policy that I hope that you guys can come up with, and I know it might go to the Supreme Court, hopefully you guys can get there, and I hope that us as a community can stand there and back with you guys, because I understand that your job is hard. But real quick, is this an anti-bullying school? Yes, no? Right. So it's anti-bullying, is it just for the students, or is it also anti-bullying if a teacher is being the bully? And what are the protocols in place for that? What happens to that teacher? So that's one question I have for you. And also the genderbread man that was posted behind glass. What school was that in? Elementary, middle, high school, all three? What's being? Okay, so the teacher that posted that, is she being, or he, acting like I don't know who posted it, but are they being held accountable for that in any aspect? I know that you can't really talk personnel, but just maybe put that in your head, that there's a lot of parents here that are outraged about it. Okay. Got it, thank you. But why was it allowed to be put up? Was it just put up on their own time?
It's hard for us to hear her speaking out. She's speaking out, so, I mean, if
you have a question, I mean, you can come up and ask when she's finished there.
She's done, so I had it up on my phone already. Jason Smith, Frankfurt Springs. I just want to know about it. I have 2 little girls. I don't want them getting any of that garbage. So let me hear about it. I looked it up on my phone. I'm outraged. Absolutely outraged over it. And you got it out there behind glass. So tell me about it. Thanks.
What is it? All right, if we have no other comments, we'll move to adjourn the meeting at agenda item 11.
Just not gonna talk about it.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought that question was answered then.
No, I want to hear about it. Why was it there?
So I have not been in the classroom, but I did direct the principal to remove that sign, which he did. It was put up there by students. It wasn't necessarily put up there by a teacher. It is part of the Gay Straight Alliance Club that does exist in the school.
Flyers had a name on it, and they were approved by someone.
So
You believe that? Go ahead. We're supposed to love your neighbor as you love yourself. I don't care religion, whatever. If you were just as nice to that person or anybody in this room as you want to be treated, and that's how I was raised, treat everybody like you want to be treated. That's it. I don't care if you're purple, you're black, you're Asian, whatever. If you're nice to people, you'll get that in return. We don't want anybody to leave, but I want everybody here to respect my kids' space. Don't teach them stuff that I don't want them to be taught. Not saying the teachers, but I don't want them to learn crap from other parents and other kids that are trying to jam down their throat. And I'm not going to take my kids and jam that down their throat either. If that's what you wholeheartedly believe, that's fine. But one thing that I don't really think that it was nobody get an answer to. So there's children. I mean, I was a teenage boy. You did stupid stuff just to get attention. So when you're in these classes and, hey, I'm a tree, like, at what point in time do parents know, does every parent know that their kid is here saying there's something, whether or not? I was in high school, I'm not stupid. There was so much stuff done that the parents didn't know about. I did stuff my mom and dad didn't know about. They usually found out later, but that's beside the point. But I think some of this is so just disruptive to the teaching that if these kids are doing this and their parents aren't aware of it, they should be aware of it, because maybe their parents don't back whatever they're doing. So if their parents don't believe in that and the kids are just here trying for an attention and causing a scene while the rest of our kids are trying to get an education, I think that should stop. But if you wholeheartedly believe in it, knock yourself out. You know what I mean?
Just so you know, first time I actually heard about the cat and the tree, I actually walked across the street, and Carrie told me about it. Listen, from this point forward, that's a disruption. It's going to be treated as a disruption, and the discipline process will take place, and the parents will be notified of disruption.
Thank you.
There's a bunch of talk between 14 and 18. I mean, I believe all the kids are minors until they graduate and they're 18. As we're drafting this policy, I think we should forget about the 14. They're still minors. If they want to do something in school that is different than the normal, I think their parents should know. I mean, I don't know where it is legality-wise, but that's how I stand, and I think that the parents should know everything that the child is doing out of the ordinary.
I just want to clarify, because you brought back my topic. The mental. Oh, I wanted to clarify what he meant though. He was asking about the legality thing. That was all I was going to comment on. What I mentioned of 14 as the consent age is for mental health services, which is why I was asking specifically if that is incorporated into the programs and their responses. So that's where 14 came in. It wasn't anything the school said, but it is law, it is PA state law for mental health services. Thank you for letting me know.
That's fine. I'm just saying, if we draft school board working on this new policy, I believe that we should have a stance on those age in that line.
I feel that immediate counseling, family counseling will probably tell them whether or not that's.
I'd like to make a move to adjourn.
That's fine.
Agenda item 7.1, meeting adjourned, is recommended that the board adjourn the October 12, 2002 voting meeting. Motion, Larry, second. Shelley, all in favor?